What strategies can be employed to establish and promote a strong safety culture with a new or even existing trucking organization?
Anybody who follows us knows that I don't like the term safety culture. The only reason I don't like the term is because I feel like it is a crutch that people use and it has become so overused that it's become like meaningless business speak at this point. What it is describing is something that is critically important. What I like to focus my attention on is making sure that we have a top-down approach to safety and compliance. That is essentially what a safety culture is describing. If you are a trucking company that is expecting all of this stuff of your drivers, but you're not living that out yourself as the manager or as the CEO, then it's falling on deaf ears because they're seeing your actions. If you're saying, oh, we expect you to comply with the regulations, but then you're telling them, hey, you need to get the job done, even if you're running out of hours. What you're communicating to them is that you don't care about compliance. And so how can you expect them to care about compliance? So the point is, if I'm a trucking company owner, as overused as it is, I need to have the safety first mindset. I need to make sure that I am all in when it comes to safety and compliance, and then communicate that down the chain. And then as my safety managers and as my drivers see me living out that philosophy, then it's much easier to expect that of those below you. What are you actually doing behind closed doors? You're making it hard for your drivers to get the work done within their allotted hours. And so you are driving them to a point where they are essentially forced to violate the hours of service rules. If you have that as your approach, then how can you ever expect your drivers to take that type of stuff seriously? Your safety managers are who you are relying on to kind of curb that conduct before it balloons into a systemic problem that then comes back to haunt you as the fleet. Historically, shippers and brokers and third-party intermediaries had not been regulated by the FMCSA in terms of hours of service. So in other words, historically, there were no consequences for shippers and brokers that would essentially run a motor carrier's drivers into hours of service violations. More recently, within the last 10 years, that has changed. The FMCSA has actually implemented regulations that make it a violation for a shipper or a broker to coerce a driver, a commercial driver, into violating the hours of service rules. Now, that rule is on the books. Is it ever enforced? Not very often. It takes a complaint by a driver. A driver has to make a complaint to the FMCSA that a shipper or a broker has coerced them into violating the hours of service rules, and then that has to get investigated and corroborated by evidence, and then maybe the FMCSA slaps the shipper on the wrist or something like that. I haven't seen it happen very often, but suffice it to say, there is now a regulatory mechanism to hold shippers and brokers liable for that type of conduct. Aside from that, their exposure comes in the form of highway accident litigation. If you have a shipper or a broker who is pushing a driver, even if it's not their driver, it's the driver of one of the third-party carriers that they use, if they are pushing them to a point of exhaustion, and now they've got drivers out there hauling their freight and they're drowsy and they end up killing somebody, that shipper or broker is going to be brought into that litigation inevitably. And it's going to be argued that their conduct contributed significantly to that accident. And then they're going to be held accountable in the context of that litigation. And that's where we start to see these multi-million-dollar nuclear verdicts in those types of cases. So those kinds of cases where shippers and brokers are being held liable for their interactions with drivers are becoming more and more prominent. So even if we didn't have that regulatory side of things, that exposure that stems from highway accident litigation should be a deterrent.